The Mossad is responsible of looking for the security of Jewish community. We brought the Jews from Iraq, Syria, from Yemen, Ethiopia, Morocco.
Everybody puts them out there as the top 3 spy agencies. What do you think separates the culture of Mossad versus the MI6 or versus the CIA or any other agency out there?
At all times, we have to try and identify signs and indications of peace with our present enemies.
Who trained the Mossad originally?
We were trained mainly by trial and error.
Would you put Iran at the top threat in the Middle East, or who would you put ahead of Iran?
Khomeini represents the most extreme group that exists in Islam. They don't accept us being a country at all.
And obviously you're seeing what's going on with America, and we saw what happened at the Capitol.
America has lost its prime stature around the world. And after the events of the last 2 or 3 days, I don't see how America can convince its other allies around the world that the best form of regime is democracy.
My guest today is Shabtai Shavit, who is the former head of the Mossad. And if you know what the Mossad is known for, we're going to get right into it. They're known as a top 3 strongest spy agencies in the world, with CIA being at the top. Then you got the MI6, then you have the Mossad, and they have a rich history with a lot of respect. He started in 1964 when he joined the Mossad, and then he became the director general of the Mossad, which is the head of Mossad from 1989 to 1996, with a resume and a ton of stories, but he's kept it very low profile, and it's been 25 years since he retired, so he can talk with us today. Having said that, Shabtai, thank you so much for being a guest on Valuetainment.
My pleasure.
So I understand you're in Israel right now. How are things in Israel today?
Well, you know, they say that the world is a global village, so in the sense of Corona or the COVID-19, all over the world, we are at the same situation. Most of the time we sit at home. We are waiting for the vaccine to get it, and we are looking forward to positive and good news sometimes during 2021.
Very cool. So you may be in Israel, but we're living with the same kind of challenges everywhere. It's same as Israel. So, obviously your resume, you've dealt with a lot of different things. You were involved during the collapse of the Soviet Union, the peace agreements with Jordan, whether it's the assassination of former Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin or Iranian Revolution. You've been around with a lot of different things. But before we get into that, I'd like to know the story about how you got into the Mossad. I know you were in the Navy before. How did your transition from where you were at to getting into the Mossad, how did that take place?
It started when I was a very young boy. In our backyard, we had olive trees. And next to the small village where I was born and raised, there were 2 Arab villages. And during the season, our Arab neighbors used to come over and pick up the olives from the trees. At this circumstance, and at the age of maybe 5, 6, I started to learn Arabic from our Arab neighbors. And then in high school, I was in a class which was a pilot plan to establish in the high school system in Israel a major studies of Arabic language, culture, and history of the Middle East. So I admitted and got chosen to this class, and there where we really learned Arabic very intensively, and history of the Middle East and so on and so forth, which took me in the army after graduating from high school. I went to join the army, and it took me to what we call in Hebrew Sayeret Matkal. Sayeret Matkal is one of the most famous SWAT units in the IDF. And one of the requirements then, at that time, and I'm talking about 58, after completing my high school studies, Arabic was a requirement, one of the requirements in order to join that unit. I served my compulsory service of 3.5 years in the IDF at that unit. And then I went to the Hebrew University. At that time, we had only one university in Israel, the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and I took as a major those subjects as well. So when I graduated from the university, I was loaded with the requirements that were needed in order to join the Mossad.
That's pretty intense to know that you have to join the military. And in order to join a certain unit in the military, you have to speak a certain language or else you can't be a part of it. Pretty intense requirement.
Yeah, but it was an exception those years. It was the only one place in the IDF that a foreign language was required of you.
Now, I read somewhere that you went to Harvard as well. Did you attend Harvard University or no?
Yes, I attended the Harvard University, the Kennedy School. I did the master's degree in public administration, and it was at the year of 1985, 86. It was a sort of sabbatical that I got from the Mossad, waiting to become the number 2 of the organization. I had to wait a year in order to get this job. So they sent me to a sabbatical at Harvard, which was very generous of the Israeli taxpayer, and gave me a lot of knowledge and experience, and it was fun.
But it wasn't an assignment. It wasn't like you were working.
No.
It was just you went to school.
It was a full-time student.
Now, let me ask you, you have a sense of humor. It's from the moment I talked to you, even off camera, you have a sense of humor, which is beautiful. Who were you in high school? If you and I were in school together, 14, 15, 16 years old, who was Shabtai in high school?
I was a rather mediocre student. I did not belong to the brightest and best pupils, but I got along quite well, and I had a lot of friends. And during high school, if you are smart enough, you find a way as how to get your first or second girlfriend, and it was really interesting. Yeah.
So was it just for your first, second, or was it like a third, fourth, fifth? Which one? I'm just curious which one you were.
No. Listen, you are talking to a very mediocre person.
I don't think so.
Not somebody of the extremes.
Okay. All right. I mean, you went to be the director of the Mossad, which is pretty extreme in career-wise, where you made it. So then you go into Mossad and you start kind of getting different assignments, the different kind of work that you do. At what point say, I want to go become the head of Mossad? Or was that process of getting involved to the end of it, was that accidental? Was it intentional, saying, I really believe one day I can be the head of Mossad? Or did it just kind of happen accidentally?
When I joined the organization, I intended to look at it as a lifetime job, and from the beginning, I knew that I'm going to put in it everything and anything that I brought with me to the organization. And as I remember myself, excellence was one of the virtues that I cherished since childhood. So I knew that I'm going to, in order to be upgraded and achieve such a goal, it takes a lot energy, dedication, and so on and so forth. So I knew from the beginning then that I'm going to try. And having said this, I want you to know that not only in the Mossad, in other places as well, luck is also a factor.
Yeah, I love your fire. You can feel your fire and the ambition you had, but at the same time, you respect the fact that there is a luck involved in meeting the right people and the right opportunities that come up as you're working your way to the top. We spoke earlier, and I asked the question from you. I said, there's nothing on you. I had to really work hard to find stuff on you. I mean, and don't get me wrong. There's articles. There's a lot of stuff. There's Wikipedias. There's speeches. But I had to go in different places and have my research team work to find things on you. Why, our director of CIA has millions of followers on Instagram, social media. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic, but what I'm trying to say is there's celebrities here. Why is it that in your world, it's so low key and the culture is no one really knows who's the head in charge of Mossad? What's the difference in culture there?
First of all, it was. It's not now. Since the world has become completely transparent, changes occurred also in the Mossad and in respect to the identity of the director. But traditionally, if I have to define the difference between the director of the Mossad and the director of the CIA, the latter is being nominated as a political nominee. In our system, the director of the Mossad is being chosen based on his merits and his expertise. Political inclinations and membership in political bodies do not exist in the consideration to the appointment. And another thing is that the nomination of the director is being decided by one person, which is the prime minister. The director of the Mossad is reporting only to the directly and only to the prime minister. The prime minister is the direct superior of the director. So the the prime minister is the one who chooses him, and usually the prime minister consult with the Minister of Defense and the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs. But the decision is, and the nomination is the prime minister, and the relationship between the director of Mossad and the prime minister are a relationship which resemble any other set of relationship between any minister or general director of an organization in the government, in the sense that weekly meetings, consultations, and between myself as the director and the prime minister, there was no anyone else.
So when you read about Mossad and everybody puts them out there as the top 3 spy agencies, U.S.'s neighbors are Canada and Mexico, let's just say, right? Okay, we got Cuba over here, but let's just say U.S. and Canada and Mexico. You look at UK's neighbors, they're kind of by themselves, and they got a few neighbors over here. Your neighbors are Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia. There's always conflict going on. You're a small little nation. You're not big. You're very powerful. The reputation that's been built is is one of a kind. There's some of them even call you, I don't know if you guys, you like this reputation, professional assassins with a few boundaries and strike fear in opposing enemies. And you look at the culture and what it's known for, bringing justice to those who have harmed the Jewish people, number one. Number two, neutralize military threats to the state of Israel. Number three, retaliate against the perpetrators of terror. Number four, help Jewish refugees reach the land of Israel. I mean, it's a very specific, culture that you guys have, but I want to hear it from you. What do you think separates the culture of Mossad versus the MI6 or versus the CIA or any other agency out there?
There are quite a few topics which makes the Mossad unique as compared with our partners, the Americans and the Brits. For one, the Mossad is responsible of looking for the security of Jews around the world, Jewish communities. Okay, one. Two, the Mossad was responsible in order to bring Jewish people from the diaspora who lived in countries where they were persecuted by the local authorities. And I can name you a long history since the inception of the state of Israel, and even before that, the Mossad, by executing all kinds of strange operations and activities, we brought the Jews from Iraq, we brought the Jews from Syria, we brought the Jews from Yemen, Ethiopia, Morocco, and we also brought Jews from Iran after the revolution. Since you are familiar with Iran, the way we did it, very generally speaking, we used to move them from Iran to Pakistan, and from Pakistan to Europe, and from Europe to Israel. And quite a few Iranian Jews came by this way. So this is another distinction between the responsibilities of the Mossad and the other intelligence organization. Another topic is, in addition to provide the state of Israel and the government of Israel with intelligence, we at all times we have to try and identify signs and indications of peace with our present enemies. This is why the Mossad was involved very deeply with the peace process with Egypt, which was the first Arab country that signed a peace treaty with Israel. And the same goes for the peace between Israel and Jordan. The Mossad was instrumental and played a major role in these two pieces. And we are, as I mentioned, we are expected, and it is one of our jobs to try and identify indications and political changes in the region towards peace. Another mission of the Mossad that today does not exist anymore was to chase German or former Nazi Germans who were took part in executing Jews during the Holocaust. So these are mainly the differences between us and the other intelligence organizations.
Shabtai, who trained you guys? Because when I read about the Savak was trained by CIA and the MI6, right? Who trained the Mossad originally?
Just let me add to what you just said about the training of the Savak. That in addition to the Americans and the Brits, Savak was trained by the Israelis as well. Now we were trained mainly by trial and error, because the Mossad was officially formed after the inception of the state, but before Israel was born, we had what was called the Haganah and Palmach and all kinds of military, quasi-military organizations that performed, that were acting in Israel and in the Middle East along the trail of independence, which was very lengthy. We learned by ourselves from experience.
So the Mossad didn't go to another agency to be trained. You just kind of learned on your own.
No.
But what mechanisms did you use? What did you read? What did you study? I mean, obviously, your motto is "For by stratagems you wage war." You guys don't play around when it comes down to being strategic. Were you guys required to read the book The Prince? Were you required to read The Art of War? Were you reading Napoleon? Were you studying? What was the mindset? Because strategically, you can't just be born with that kind of talent.
Let's break down the question to smaller parts. As much as the IDF is concerned, the IDF was trained by other armies. Part of the training was by Israeli and Jewish officers who served in the British army or in the American army, and who came to Israel, immigrated to Israel, and became officers in the IDF, and they brought and implemented whatever they had experienced before. So that's how the training of the military started, and then the IDF started to establish a relationship with foreign armies, usually mainly with friendly countries' armies, and the Israeli officers were sent to colleges and academies and foreign armies. This is not related to the Mossad. The Mossad and the security service, what we call the Shin Bet, which is the internal security service, we have grown up, as I mentioned before, by trial and error. Only experience. And the experience started before the inception of the state. During the British mandate.
The experience started prior to the inception of the state. So let me ask you this:
the conflict between us and the Arabs started back towards the end of the 19th century, and at that time, in the tiny Israel, during the British mandate, there were two different people. There were Jews and there were Arabs living together and having a conflict. And we didn't have neither the time nor the resources in order to bring foreign instructors and foreign experienced people in order to help us build our security and military capabilities. We did it alone, and mainly through trial and error.
I mean, that's very, very. So I guess it produces. It makes me think about a couple questions. Number one, when Mossad first got started, did the Mossad in Israel go recruit folks who were Jewish from other countries who trained in their secret intelligence and military and recruit them back to Israel
No.
give insider. But I mean, how do you? But it's the reason why I ask this question is, look, for example, I'll give you an idea. Do you follow sports? Are you a sports guy or no? Do you follow any sports?
I follow sports a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if you follow sports, if I'm a 6-year-old kid today, I can steal Michael Jordan's video plays by watching his YouTube videos. You know what I mean? If I play baseball today, I can watch and go study Barry Bonds' swing or Ken Griffey's swing. If I play soccer, I can go study what Maradona did or what, Zidane did or what Ronaldinho does. But if you're, a new secret spy agency, there is no YouTube videos to study. Who do you study? What book did you study? What manual did you study? That's a pretty challenging thing to do when your neighbors are Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Saudi Arabia.
Listen, today we are already beyond 70 years since the independence of the state. Even by studying alone, you can reach a certain point of expertise. And I don't know why. To me, it sounds very, very typical. When you mentioned that Jews from other places, this was not the system, because when you are in an intelligence service and you establish a relationship with friendly intelligence services around the world, the main rule is that you don't spy on your friends. So today, we do have relations with other services. We do exchange intelligence with other services. We do meet with. We do organize research meetings and evaluation meetings, and we also here and there participate in activities that resemble the definition of studying or upscaling our capabilities. And but today, when we do it, it's on a reciprocity kind of form.
Was
if you
there?
understand what I mean.
Shabtai, was there a mastermind behind Mossad? Was there like one big figure that you guys all looked up to and were trained by his beliefs or training system and manual and, et cetera, et cetera? Was there some mastermind behind Mossad?
Historically, what I can tell you is that the first grain of the Mossad were Israeli soldiers in the British Army participating in World War II. And towards the end of World War II, those people, those Israeli soldiers, were assigned to find and gather the remaining Jews from the Holocaust, take care of them in order to bring them at the end of the day to Israel. So this group of people were the first grain of the Mossad. When they finished their job of gathering the remaining Jews in Europe, bringing them to Israel, then, and it was in the year of 51, the Mossad was legally formed and established by the then Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion. And the mission at that point of time has changed from taking care of the Holocaust survivors to an intelligence organization which gathering information on Israel's enemies, adversaries, and so on.
Got it. So there's not a major mastermind that was training everybody certain tactics. It was an evolution of trial and error.
Yeah, well, of course we can pinpoint to
David
personalities who were at the head of this organization since its beginnings, but I cannot recall of any kind who was experienced or genius to the extent that he could form the organization from A to Z at one point of time.
It makes me think, because if that's the case, why aren't other countries a top 3 secret intelligence? If they can learn by trial and error, how come they don't make it at the levels that you guys made it? It really makes me think about that. But let me ask you a different question. So you've been a part of the Mossad from 64 to 96. Yeah. That's 32 some years. But from 89 to 96, you were the head of Mossad, and then obviously you've been retired now for 25 years. Has the enemy of Israel changed from 64 till today? And what has that evolution looked like? Or have all the enemies pretty much been the same 2, 3, 4, 5 candidates?
Well, the world is changing all the time. The world does not stand still for a moment, and the same goes for the Middle East and for the structure of the conflict between Israel and its neighbors. First of all, we can pinpoint to the first peace agreement between Israel and Egypt, and it was initiated by the War of 73, what we call Yom Kippur War. The grains of peace with Egypt started with the war of 1973. The peace with Jordan was signed in 95 after 5, 6, 7 decades of enmity and adversarial relationships. In Egypt, listen, we can put the line in on 1947, 1948 as the baseline of the adversarial relationship between Israel and its neighbors. So the main and number one adversary were the Palestinians, who shared the same territory with us, and the main cause for the conflict was who owns this territory. And then Arab countries joined the Palestinians in the War of Independence. Egypt was the first one. Syria, Jordan joined the Palestinians, and then we found ourselves in what we named the War of Independence, which, by the way, metaphorically, I can tell you that the War of Independence has not yet finished, even today. We, to a certain extent, we are still in our War of Independence. As long as the territorial question is not solved, and as long as there are countries that don't acknowledge the Israel as a sovereign state in the Middle East, the war, for all practical purposes, is not yet finished. And then the era of the Cold War, and the wars that we had, we can say that every decade since the beginning of the state, every decade we had at least one big war, and in between we had all kinds of small military operations and skirmishes, and then from a certain point of time we had to cope with the phenomenon of terrorism, which for 3-4 decades was sort of a local domestic event, which was a civil kind of phenomenon who fought for independence and then after or during the spring revolutions, terrorism adopted the religious side of it, and instead of being a civil kind of entity, it has become a religious entity, and religion turned the phenomenon of the terrorist phenomenon from a local event to become global event. The last development, of course, is what happened during the last few weeks or so, that the Emirates countries and Morocco have upgraded their relationship with Israel, and it's a very positive development, which may affect the future of the region, maybe even towards ending the ancient conflict between us and the Palestinians. So the situation is volatile. The situation is changing all the time, and of course, it's not a two-party kind of a game. All the Arab world is, to a certain extent, is involved in it, and then we have regional powers like Iran and Turkey, and then we have the global powers, Russians, Chinese, and America, who are also involved in this playground. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I believe that at least partly I succeeded.
No, that was crystal clear, and it's interesting. You said Iran, Turkey, Russia, China. Those are the four countries I have written down here that I wanted to ask you about. How much were you involved on finding out? Even have an insider scoop on what happened with the Iranian Revolution. There's a lot of different stories when they talk about the overthrowing of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, and how right after the dinner with Carter, he leaves in 77, December 31st, they, toast, and he leaves, and almost the riots, the protesting, the revolution begins. And then 13 months later, a little over 13 months later, he's in exile and he's out, and Iran gets, turned over to Khomeini, and things changed a lot. And there's a lot of different speculation on what took place, whether it was the 25-year contract of oil that was coming up, the consortium agreement of 1954 between Iran, Germany, US, UK, and I think France. And they had the secret meeting saying, let's get him to dethrone him. There's some tensions with what was going on with other reasons for Carter and Iran. There's a lot of different stories that you hear about, but that's something that's close to me because I grew and I've had a lot of different talks with people that were directly involved in that. But I'm curious to hear from you, because if you were involved 64 to 96, 78, 79, and you guys trained a lot of the Savak that came to you for training, there's got to be some kind of a story or even factual reasons that you have on why Iran fell, because they were doing fine. It's not like they weren't doing good. They were expanding, and all of a sudden they had to fall. Well, what do you think was the reason behind it?
We have a saying that a man is close to himself, in the sense that I can give you my personal experience. You didn't mention the fact that I spent 2.5 years in Iran in person. Me and my young and beloved wife. Since the beginning of 1966 to the summer of '68, a relative long time before the revolution in Iran. But I can tell you, for instance, that and we spend time mainly in the south, Abadan, Khorramshahr, and the Gulf, those places. And I cannot forget that prior to each and every Memorial Day to the sacrifice of the Shiites prophets, Hassan and Hussein, the government called the foreign people who lived at that time in Iran, and they asked the foreigners, please remain in your houses during those days of memorial. And I remember that when I faced this unique phenomenon, because I was not exposed to this kind of events before. I remember asking myself the question: hey, how is it going to end? Towards where this religious factor will develop? And jumping from 66, 7, and 8 towards the 70s and the end of the 70s, and I'm speaking now generally, in general terms, our evaluation was that Iran going towards a revolution or the change of the regime. We share this information with our American partners. I can remind you that at that time the American ambassador was Helms, the guy who later on became the director of the CIA as well. As much as I can recall it, the Americans have not accepted our evaluations. And why is it so? Because the Americans and other foreigners were exposed to the military capabilities of Iran. Their evaluation was that the Shah was pretty much ready and capable to cope with any attempt of a revolution.
He was ready?
Ready, I mean, ready militarily.
Okay.
Ready militarily. The one point which no one at that time, at least among the intelligence circle, was that what's going to be the attitude of President Carter. And as I put together all the pieces, the Shah waited for President Carter to nod with his head like this. And Carter didn't do it. Not only didn't do it, he expressed his objection to any military step supposedly taken by the Shah.
Do you know why though? Do you know why though? I mean, these are everything you said, aside from the part where you guys kind of knew the revolution was coming up and he had a strong military. The Shah had a very strong military. He had a strong secret intelligence that was working with him. The enemies he had at the time was Today, which was the Communist Party. I'm sure you're familiar with the Today party that was running around in Iran, folks who were leaving Russia and coming down with the Karl Marx book, Communist Manifesto. And you had the Hezbollahs that were kind of growing underground. He had 3,000 political refugees that he was keeping where it wasn't going to be too much ruckus going on. He had great relationship with U.S. I think he had a decent relationship with Israel. Why not support the Shah and help him out to make sure they don't have the revolution that takes place? Why keep looking away and say, no, wait a little longer, and tell Kissinger, yeah, we'll help you, but not yet. We'll help you, but not yet. We got it, but not yet. Is there anything that we don't know on why that took place?
I cannot answer for the Americans. I can tell you that the nature of the relationship between Israel and Iran at that time, the relationship were clandestine, were secret. There was no diplomatic exchange, open diplomatic exchange. The Israeli embassy building in Tehran was a sort of an unknown place. We didn't have official relationship with Iran, so even if we wanted, we couldn't, and the Shah didn't accept it. That we offered him, listen, we'll come to help you, and so on and so forth. We weren't in a position to replace the U.S., which was the number one ally who was a partner with Iran and the Shah. What I did emphasize was that we shared our knowledge and assessments, which were based on Israelis on the ground. At that time, there were a huge number of Israelis of all trades and businesses and activities in Iran, meeting and doing business with locals, and based on the feelings and personal experience of the Israelis who were there, we reached the conclusion that there is something which is building up, which is brewing up, and it was not based on intelligence, because being allies of Iran, we have not collected intelligence on Iran those days. We used Iran as a back base to collect intelligence on our enemies, Iraq, the Gulf, and Syria, and so on. So what we did, we shared what we believed with the Americans. We more than that, you can't expect us to do then.
Was it more peaceful for you as neighboring countries? Obviously, Iran's not a direct neighbor, but it's in the Middle East. Was it more peaceful for Israel and less turmoil with the Shah being in charge, running Iran, or Ayatollah Khomeini?
No, if it were for us to choose, we would would choose the Shah, not the Khomeinis. Listen, Khomeini represents the most extreme group that exists in Islam. The Shiites is the most extreme group in Islam. They don't accept us being a country at all. They don't acknowledge our existence in the Middle East. Every twice a week, they come out with declaring their overall intention to obliterate Israel of the earth. So the choice for us, if we could then save the Shah and Iran, we would have done it. We would have done it gladly and willingly. Listen, you are talking to a guy who was a big shot, but responsible on an operation which was maybe 10% of the equivalent of America and Europeans.
Yeah, it makes me think if the level of turmoil on how it increased right after the Shah left, why would have some nations want more turmoil in the Middle East? What benefit is it? Is it more power for negotiation for oil? Is it more power to even have you need America more, Israel need America more, because now you got another person that's creating more havoc, which is Iran and Iraq war, and you kind of got to be careful. Why? What is the real deeper motive of wanting? Because if Kissinger and Carter know, if they don't help, shit's going to hit the fan in the Middle East. Like, it's not like they didn't know about it. Everyone knew Khomeini comes in, it's going to be catastrophic in the Middle East, which that's what it cost 500,000 people's lives, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know why there weren't more people trying to prevent that from happening, and why they kind of looked away. I'm always curious. Again, for me, it's direct. It's kind of like when, for you'll probably read or watch anything that has to do with, the Munich, with what happened with the Israeli Olympians, with what happened with the Holocaust, or what happened with, and I'm not making it comparable on the level of severity. I'm just saying like events that happen that affect your life, or what Imad Mournier did, one of the founders of Hezbollah, that you guys went and eventually you took him out. Those things matter to you because they affected your livelihood, your country, where you raise your family. For me, it was what happened with the Shah and Carter and Kissinger and a lot of these guys. So, okay, fair enough. I don't think, is there any other comments you have on this or no?
Yeah, look, I'll tell you what I'll do tomorrow. Tomorrow is weekend. I'll go to Kissinger's memories in order to look for the chapter on Iran to read now what was his thoughts then.
Yeah.
He's still around, and Carter is still around.
It really makes me think. So the last thing we talk about here before we wrap up, you said a few things. You said, you have the smaller, enemies where, the Wall of Independence, a lot of them hasn't been done yet. It's still going on. But then you talked about the bigger, potential powerhouses in the world. And obviously you're seeing what's going on with America, with Trump now, finally, the transition is taking place with Biden coming in with Kamala Harris. And we saw what happened at the Capitol. I'm sure you saw that in Israel on the news. But who you did or you didn't? Yeah.
I did, of course. And I saw the origin, the CNN and Fox and the others.
What'd you think about it? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, it made me very sad what I saw.
What do you think in the direction?
It really made me, and look, being Israeli, and I don't hide the fact for a moment that Israeli existence and Israeli security, to a very large extent, is dependent on the US. I try to judge the events of the last few days through the prism of what is the interest of Israel in this development. And I'm sorry to say that the first point that hit me was that America in the last few days has lost its prime stature around the world. America, since the end of World War II, was the lighthouse of democracy, of liberal democracy, of marketplace economy, of freedom, of equality to the rest of the world. America, since the end of World War II to this day, was the guarantor and the leader of the Western world. And after the events of the last 2 or 3 days, I don't see how American can convince its other allies around the world, and not to mention the adversaries, that the best form of regime is democracy. Pick any one leader among the Khamenei and the Erdogan, or the guy in Brazil, or the guy in the Philippines, or the rulers of the Middle East. And can you argue and convince them that democracy is the preferable and the best regime in order to build the world, to bring more harmony, to build equality?
What are you suggesting? What are you suggesting? Is there a suggestion in that statement of yours?
Well, I by far more modest than trying to define the future of the world. But I can tell you a few words about the possible eventual development in the Middle East regarding the situation in the Middle East and the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. I believe that the development which took place in recent weeks, namely the upgrade of relationship between Israel and some of the Emirates and Morocco, is good news. Is very important. It first and foremost, it transmitted a very strong signal to the Palestinians that, listen, guys, we were supporting you since 1945 till today, but the world today is not what it used to be in the past, and you have to reckon with the changes that are taking place in the Middle East. Now Israel is not anymore our enemy. Our enemy is extreme Islam, being represented mainly by Iran, who's pursuing a nuclear military capability. This is the real threat now. So you Palestinians, it's high time for you to change your policy. But there is an additional condition to what I'm saying. One is that the president-elect or the President Biden should adopt a strategy that the US is not leaving the Middle East. And not only because of Israel and the Palestinians, because of many other reasons, because of the security of the world, because the Russians are competing with them, because the Chinese are competing with them, because America need to go on leading the free world, and leading the free world, it means to have a foot also in the Middle East. You should now bring in Saudi Arabia and create a new axis of US leading, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Egypt and Jordan, with which we have a peace already, and the Emirates, vis-a-vis the threats of Iran and Turkey. And within this framework, the Palestinian will be in a position that, whether they like it or not, they'll have to change their attitude and policy, and to become a partner to a solution for the conflict with Israel.
Let me ask you this question. Would you put Iran at the top threat in the Middle East, or would you put who would you put ahead of Iran? Would you put them at the top as the biggest threat?
Iran is as an Israeli, Iran is the top threat to the Middle East.
Fair. So
to Israel.
So here's my follow-up question for you there. Go back the last 12 years. Okay, last 12 years, post-Bush era, Obama comes in, Obama-Biden carried the $150 billion deal with Iran. They negotiate, and then boom, then Trump comes and says, no, the deal is off the table. I'm not helping you out. And then he puts sanctions on Iran. Iran gets weaker. 21 nations in the Middle East cannot do business with them. Banks stop lending to many of the businesses there. How do you feel about the policies that was led with Obama and Biden and Kerry with Iran versus policies of what Trump did with Iran? Forget the personalities. Take the personalities out. Take the Obama, Biden, Kerry personalities out. Take Trump personality out. I'm specifically talking about policies. Which one of those policies made the Middle East safer?
My personal opinion is the policies of Obama and Biden.
To give $150 billion to Iran made it safer in the Middle East?
To build a coalition with the Europeans and to sign an agreement with Iran for which gave us between 10 and 15 years without an Iranian nuclear bomb in the Middle East.
So let me ask you a question.
Another part of my answer is a question. When Trump decided to get out of the agreement, did he really consider to go to war on this issue?
What do you mean?
I mean that Iran is continuing to build its capability. 2 days ago, 3 days ago,
20%.
They announced the rest of the world that they are starting to upgrade their uranium to 20%. From 20% to 90%, it's a fortnight.
Here's a question for you. But here's a question for you to be thinking about. Say the 150 is given to them, okay? Say the 150 is given to them you're kind of buying them to not work on nuclear weapons. Do you really actually trust behind closed doors Iran and the mindset that they have where you don't exist? Do you think behind closed doors they're not going to be building a nuclear bomb? You really believe that?
Now, the decision those days when Obama made the decision to enter into a negotiation was either or. Either I am ready to use force in order to knock them down, similar to what we done back in 1981 in Iraq, or what's the alternative? Buying time. Time is a very essence element.
The question I'm asking is, do you actually trust that Iran's not building behind closed doors, whether you give them money or not?
I'm not trusting Iran, especially since I used to negotiate in the bazaar, in the Tehran bazaar with the Iranian merchants. So I recognize quite.
So you know they're good negotiators.
Yeah, wow, they invented
the they invented
negotiations. Yeah.
So if you don't trust that,
but
I think it's naive to think that here's a nation that says death upon America. I lived there 10 years, 10,000 men marching, flagellating their back, trail of blood on the ground saying death upon America. And then they hate your nation and we give them money, even though just last week they say screw both nations. And then they're creating allegiance with China. And in July, they're negotiating a $400 billion investment in Iran from China. And you're looking at alliances being created. Turkey is close to Russia. I mean, you kind of saw what happened with Armenia and Azerbaijan, where Russia kind of came in and to try to settle things down. And why strengthen Iran? That concerns me. And listen, this is a guy that was born and raised in Iran. You know, I don't know if Iran's, even if you give him $1 trillion, if Iran behind closed doors is not going to be building a nuclear bomb.
Listen, you lure me to a point where I have to ask you a question.
Please.
What's your alternative?
My alternative is, when I asked you a question, if you had to choose between Khomeini and Shah, you said, of course, we would have chosen the Shah because it was safer, it was more peaceful, it was less issues. Yeah. My alternative would be, if the Iranian people don't like the current regime, well, why don't you let them do today what they did in 1978, 79, when 9 million people revolted and there was a fall of an empire. And then there was a different kind of a regime that came in. Because if we go like this, and the way you're shutting down people who are threatening to take your life is by saying, let me give you some money. Like your kid says, if you don't give me money, Dad, I will never love you and I'm going to marry the guy you don't want me to marry. Baby, please don't marry that guy. Here's $1 million. Okay, I'm not going to marry him. I don't understand that tactic. I just don't understand that tactic. So for me, I would say, leave them alone, leave the sanctions, let them finally realize, look, we need to get our act together. We can't be going around talking about threatening Iran and Israel. And then they can come down and say, can we negotiate? And we renegotiate. And that pain could take 6, 12, 24, 36 months. Not, oh my gosh, please, guys, here's some money. Stop killing people. I don't know if that's the right strategy. Again, I'm just a person that's doing an interview here. I'm asking you, the expert, to see what you think about this, because I don't think the current approach of giving these guys money is an effective approach.
Listen, the people who listen to me, listen to you as well. Let them judge between us two.
That's fair enough. Last question for you. Thoughts on Soleimani being taken out and Mohsen Fakhrizadeh being taken out, the number one nuclear scientist. When that happened, what did you think about? Like, where did your mind go when you saw Qassem Soleimani and Fakhrizadeh being taken out?
I'll tell you what went through my mind. The notion then that when we did similar or identical operations like this in the past, no one in the world knew about it. Whereas today, those who does it make sure that it will hit the headlines.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So in other words, if you had have done this, you wouldn't have taken credit for it.
I would have, and not only that, I would plan it in such a way that I'll have that deniability even after the event.
Well, then you're in a league of your own. You know, you're something else when you were the head of Mossad. But look, I got to tell you, I really enjoyed this time with you. I appreciate you taking the time. What time is in Israel right now while we're doing this, brother? I'm curious. What time is it there?
The time now is 6:30 p.m.
6:30. Well, it's time for dinner. Your family's probably waiting for you. But I've really, really enjoyed the last 80, 90 minutes with you. I appreciate your insight. I wish you nothing but the very best. But I'll give you the final thoughts. What are your final thoughts here that you want to say to the audience that's listening to this?
I would tell them that the world we live in can and should be a better place to live in. And at the end of the day, it depends on each and every one of us. Had every one of us did a drop of good deed for that purpose, we would have enjoyed a better world. But first, we have to beat the corona.
Yeah, it looks like Pfizer and Moderna came out with the vaccine and they're spreading it all over the world. So hopefully it'll get out there very soon.
Tell me, do you speak Farsi?
I do.
Really?
Yes.
So I'll bid you farewell by saying Khuda Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz. Kheli merci. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.